In winter of 1943, a small group of Norwegian resistance fighters pulled off one of the most daring acts of sabotage in World War II. Their mission? To stop a certain Austrian painter from developing nuclear weapons. And it all took place right here, in one of the most isolated and unforgiving parts of Norway. This is the story of how a few brave men foiled the Germans' nuclear dreams at a place called Vemork. Vemork was a hydroelectric plant built in the early 20th century. It was here that the Germans were producing something called heavy water, which they believed could be crucial in creating an atomic bomb. When an Austrian painter and his friends took over Norway in 1940, they ramped up production, hoping to gain a significant advantage in the nuclear arms race. But the Allies couldn't let that happen, and that's where our saboteurs come in. Their story begins in Britain, when Norwegian resistance fighters were trained by the British Special Operations Executive. Their mission? To parachute into occupied Norway, trek through the wilderness, and destroy the heavy water production facility at Vemork. Should be no bother, right? To say that the terrain was challenging would be an understatement. The saboteurs had to cross the Hardangervidda, a massive frozen plateau carrying skis, explosives and supplies to survive weeks in sub-zero temperatures. And they had to do all of this in the dead of winter, with temperatures plummeting well below freezing. But it wasn't just the cold they had to contend with. The Germans had fortified the area, stationing hundreds of soldiers around the plant, installing searchlights and guarding the only bridge leading to Vemork. Any frontal assault would have been suicide, so the saboteurs needed another way in. The plant itself was perched on a cliff, with a deep gorge below. The bridge, it was the only obvious entry point, but it was heavily guarded. The saboteurs had a daring plan: descend the icy cliffs, cross the freezing river at the bottom, and climb back on the other side, all under the cover of darkness. Imagine this: it's pitch black, it's freezing, and you're scaling down a cliff with a rope, knowing that one slip could send you plunging into the icy waters below. Remarkably, they made it across. When they reached the plant, they slipped past the guards without firing a single shot, relying on stealth and precision. Once inside, the team placed explosives on the heavy water production tanks, set the charges and vanished back into the night. When the bombs went off, they didn't just damage the plant, they crippled it. Heavy water production came to a halt, throwing a significant wrench into the German nuclear program. But how close were they to developing nuclear weapons? Well, not as close as some dramatic wartime stories might suggest. The Germans were indeed interested in the potential of nuclear weapons, but by 1942, they had shifted their focus towards developing nuclear reactors rather than bombs. While they explored the atomic bomb concept early in the war, by 1945, they were nowhere near building one. They were working on a prototype reactor that might have operated in a self-sustaining way, but that's not the same as creating a bomb. By the time the war was ending, the Germans were roughly where the United States had been in December 1942, just after the first controlled nuclear train reaction in Chicago. But the US bomb program was far more advanced, requiring billions of dollars, hundreds of thousands of workers and vast amounts of uranium, all to produce just the 3 bombs that were dropped in 1945. The Germans simply lacked the resources, supply chains and protection from bombing raids necessary to catch up. So while the raid at Vemork helped disrupt Germany's efforts, the reality is that the German nuclear program was never close to producing a bomb. That said, the raid on Vemork wasn't the end of the story. In 1944, the Germans attempted to transport the remaining heavy water to Germany by ferry. But the Norwegian resistance, they weren't going to let this happen. In another act of sabotage, they planted explosives on the ferry itself. When the ferry sank, it took with it the last of the heavy water, effectively ending the German nuclear program. The raids on Vemork and the sinking of the ferry didn't just slow the Nazi nuclear program, they may have stopped it from progressing entirely. And while it's true that Germany wasn't close to building an atomic bomb, the fear that they could have been was enough to drive the Allies to act. What makes this story even more remarkable than it already is: the saboteurs were just ordinary men, teachers, farmers, electricians, who found themselves taking on one of the most dangerous missions of the war. Against incredible odds, they succeeded. The Vemork heavy water sabotage is a story of courage, ingenuity and determination. It's a reminder that even in the darkest times, a few brave individuals can change the course of history. If you ever find yourself in Norway, you can still visit the Vemork plant, a place where history was made. And if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to subscribe for more stories like this one. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. The saboteurs had to cross this pronunciation, across the harder. The saboteurs had to cross the Hardangervidda. Okay, let me try one more time.